Hi all, welcome to another Kingscrusher radio show. It's Tuesday around 9:10, just after Hobby City. I'm going to mute over here. Now, I've got some interesting games to show you tonight, and I would say they're not mega complex, but I believe I've got a particular skill that I can actually waffle on about very, very simple games for ages and ages. So actually it's a good thing. It's a good thing that these are going to be short games we're going to have a look at, but more than one. And they're taken from the notable games at Chess Gamescom, games prior to 1800, which is called the best of the best. So these are really, really historic classic games. Let's review them just in case we have a glimpse into something which maybe we didn't realise, or something that gets highlighted from these absolutely amazingly historical games. So the first one is the legal, I think actually, not legal, the legal against St. Brie. That's not a make of cheese. This was 1750. So this game, we see e4. So this was played in 1750, apparently. So these are absolute classic games. And we have e5, knight f3, d6, bishop c4, which points at f7. So yeah, bishop g4, knight c3, and let's see, knight c3, g6 was played here. Yeah, g6 was played here. Actually, let's put on a bit just in case I say some really dumb things. Okay, so g6 is a kind of mistake in this position, and I hope that you can all see why it's a mistake. So we're going back to absolute basics tonight, absolute basics of chess. So white play, this is a very, very important trap to know. So if I could bits there, white play as well. What would you play in this position? And also on stream, so I'll give you all 20 seconds to say what would you play with white, and I hope you all know this. It's a really classic game, and it goes back such a long time. But some people believe this particular game might have been slightly made up. You can't trust it's the exact thing. It might have been slightly altered in some way, because there's an evidence that the fianchettos are quite a modern invention, and so if we're dating this game at 1750, this might have been actually not the actual game that was played, and this is like concrete evidence. Maybe some of these games are kind of made up, but because g6, this is kind of hyper modern stuff. But yeah, knight. Okay, I hope you get this. This is a common trap idea, that we have a relative pin on the knight. Now the relative pin it's nice. It's nice to note pins, right? Because then you're aware of consequences if the pin piece moved. But it's not an absolute pin. It's not as if the knight's absolutely pinned, and sometimes it's useful to know other things like overloaded pieces and just pieces that are on duty. It's good to make notes of things, but here it's not an absolute pin, and in fact knight takes e5 is the move, believe it or not. And I hope everyone's seen this. If you haven't seen this, please let me know, because that makes the whole thing worth doing. If you haven't seen this trap before, it has been on my channel as well. So it's so on bishop takes, we have two lovely forcing moves which show extreme elegance of the chess pieces and coordination. So bishop takes, and then knight d5. So the knights and the bishop, they all work together to take away all the escape squares of the king. So this is a really classic old game, 1750 dated, but there is some controversy, as I haven't seen chat with understanding the idea optimistic pawn there. Okay, there is some controversy that actually the game might have very well been you know, more likely it could have been this blunder, knight here, knight takes, in which case this is a mistake here, because knight takes e5 just wins a piece. It protects. That would be a mistake, but it's actually more likely this is the game and it was changed. Now if pawn takes, yeah, then we still have queen takes, but this might have been a more likely game, because this fianchetto, yeah, is a bit more modern, but that it's more likely the game was like this, with that blunder, bishop takes instead of knight takes, and then we have the check and knight d5. But okay, there's some controversy about the game, so let's go on to another game now. This is from the best of the best at chessgames.com. So the beauty of these games, the real beauty, is that they don't have to blow your mind. You know, you can be maybe tired one day and you want to go over the old classics, because I don't know if you've noticed, if you try and go over a modern GM game nowadays, it's going to usually blow your mind. It's going to be mega complex. So if you want a more relaxing time, so you've had a hard day at work or whatever, and you're actually nearly like mentally exhausted, but you'd like to go over some chess games, then just go back in history. Yeah, just go back in time. Things were much simpler back then. So this is Francesco. I'm going to get the names all wrong here. Let me see if there's some pronunciation help. Francesco di Castavelli. No, there's no pronunciation help. Okay, but he was apparently a lord of several towns in the area of Játiva and Valencia, Spain. So he was an advisor in the Aragonese court of King Ferdinand. Wow. So, and he was playing Narciso Yñols, who is he was a politician and writer and belonged to a family of lawyers apparently. So let's have a look at this game. So e4. So this is apparently in. This is like apparently in. Well, 1475, if that's to be believed. This game may be the oldest recorded game of chess, in fact. So we have d5. Yes, this opening isn't very good. It's not to be recommended to anyone. Anyone playing it is only playing it to get weird sidelines of chess. It's really a bad opening. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, it's good. It's played by some good players. Occasionally, the Scandinavian defence or centre counter. It used to be called the centre counter, and the Scandinavian defence is the more modern name. So e takes d5. It depends how it's played after, actually. So black in this game, I think the preferred treatment nowadays is queen a5. So queen a5 is the preferred treatment by far. We're talking over 5,000 games with queen a5, and not the queen retreat. This is considered, I believe this is really considered far superior to queen d8. But anyway, queen d8, bishop c4, knight f6, knight f3 is played now, and we have bishop g4, and black voluntarily gives up that light square bishop. So this is a bit of a thing, you know, when you give up the light square bishop, you are weakening a lot of the light squares all around the shop, like in the Morphic Opera game. You're weakening a lot of light squares. The opponent's got a resource which you've got no real counterpart of, and so it's the light squares are very, very interesting for white now because there's no counterpart. We have e6, queen takes b7, and the pain doesn't end with losing one pawn. White goes for another. We have rook c8. Now another pawn is lost. Knight b6, and the exchange is lost. d4, and this is quite clever because really it's trying to lure the queen away from the knight. Remember, this is 1475. Don't be too harsh and judgmental. And by the way, I think that's the same of like the Queen of Katwe. I don't know why people are saying, oh, she's only like you know, 1450 FIDE. You know, if you're like if you've been like starving to death, you know, chess is probably one of the last activities. You know, so if someone has a 1450 FIDE rating, or if the game happens to be in 1475, you know, yes, it's not modern FIDE, you know, Grandmaster standards, but we're looking at a game, you know, from 1475. You know, keep things in context. Yeah, so yeah, this is brilliant for the time, right? So knight d6, we have bishop b5 check, knight takes b5, queen takes b5 check, and now white, you know, plays a nice move to try and open the central file. So e takes, bishop e3, bishop d6, rook d1. Yeah, this is apparently, if this is a, you know, actually the game, it's both sides are really, you know, playing, considering the time, you know, amazingly well. Queen g6, and now we have a really clever move, you know, for the time, the standards of the time, trying to lure the bishop away, and that happens. You know, bishop takes, queen takes d7, queen d8 checkmate. So it has some cleverness, this game, but remember, this is 1475, so it's amazing that this game was recorded. How do we know, how was it recorded, for example? I mean, there are lots of things about this which create discussion, which is not necessarily about the game concept, but you know, why was it recorded? And if you look at the annotation, if you look at the kibitzing at chessgames.com, sometimes they do put these games into great context. Someone said, for example, this must be the first recorded chess game, because before 1485 the pieces like the queen can only move one square at a time. So actually this is also a historical technological advance for chess, that the queen was moving more than one square at the time, and it was actually recorded with this completely different dynamic. Yeah, so this was the first time they had such powerful pieces, powerful queens. So yeah, it's like a new technology has been added to the game, and this is the first recorded game with the new technology of the queens moving more than one square at a time. So yeah, that's the importance of this game. And it did show actually some tactical prowess from Francisco. So anyway, so I urge you to look at the comments around these games to get a context for them. But let's go forward in time now. Greco versus NN. So Greco versus NM. Apparently, so this is in Rome. So this was in 1619. Giacchino Greco. So Greco, just a bit of history on Greco, also known as Il Calabrese, was born around 1600 in Silico, Italy. So Greco started keeping a notebook of tactics and games, and took up the custom of giving copies of his manuscripts to his wealthy patrons. In 1621, so that was actually 2 years after this game, he took off to test himself against the rest of Europe, visiting Paris and later London. So there's one of the historical significances of this game. This is Greco when he's still back in Italy before he set off for Europe. He spent the last years of his life at the King Philip IV's court and died in the West Indies, seemingly from a disease. They contracted there around 1634. So he didn't live that much longer past this game, 1634. He bequeathed his earnings from chess to the Jesuits. After his early death, a game collection was published containing 150 games with his own annotations. Can you imagine 150? How many annotated games of modern IMs and GMs have been lost? There are so many, you wouldn't have 150 games. So it's incredible that at this time, this sort of person has 150 recorded like annotated games. It's just incredible. He was the first kind of really documented player. Now you might think, by the way, NN means no name. Actually, technically, by the way, that's not true, although it kind of means, it's actually it does mean unknown player, and it's actually it's not no name. It's an abbreviation of a Latin nomen nescio, which means I do not know the name, just in case you were wondering about that. So it's actually, yes, Latin, nomen nescio. So let's have a look at this game. E4, and we have B6, D4, bishop B7, bishop D3, and black tries to exploit this kind of weakness of the last move, that the bishop has neglected G2, and we've got this bishop seemingly quite useful on the diagonal. So black plays the hyper aggressive F5. But in trying to exploit this weakness of the last move, of course black is inadvertently weakening this diagonal here. So white cunningly says, I'm going to exploit your weakness of the last move because you're trying to exploit my weakness of the last move, but haha, I'm going to exploit your weakness of the last move. So this is black's weakness of the last move, and this seems to be white's weakness of the last move, but this is only a rook at stake fundamentally. This is the king at stake. So guess who wins here? Yes, that's right, it's white that is played queen h5 check. After g6, it's very desperate already for black. F takes g, and with the lethal threat of checkmating already, so forget about the rook. Knight f6, and the clever point here is actually white doesn't just win material. Can you see the clever point here? What does white play here? So white's play, if I give you 20 seconds, what's the best top, if you were an engine, what would you play here? So 200 points, white play here. Any ideas? So what would you play in this position? So what's the most technically accurate move here? Okay, so give yourself minus 2,000 points if you're materialistic with G7. Although this is winning, it wasn't the best because there's something super elegant instead, which is actually sacrificing the queen, which is clinical, is a clinical continuation. And when I use the term clinical, I mean kind of technically the restriction of the opponent's candidate moves to a bare minimum where possible. That's what basically a clinical move to me is. So that's the absolute clinical move because there's only like one move choice for black, and then we have checkmate. Yeah, just with the bishop. So elegance, conciseness, everything. A beautiful game. Refutation of black trying to exploit this kind of weakness of the last move, but fundamentally, yes, what was at stake? The king there compared to the rook. So that was apparently in Rome 1619, so before he had left Italy for Europe. So Greco, amazing player for his era. Now we'll go 9 years earlier and we'll check out a player called Polerio. So Polerio, this is 9 years earlier, this is still in Rome, Italy, and he was playing Domenico. So Polerio, let's have a quick little background on Polerio, which for me is half the importance, by the way, of these games, to get into a bit the history and culture of the game and how, you know, chess diffused around Europe. How did it actually diffuse from where to where to where in the early years? So Polerio, born 1548, died 1612, 64 years old. He actually lived quite a long time for the time, yeah. So Polerio was playing against Domenico, who there's no information about his opponent. Let's have a look. E4, E4, E5, knight F3. We have Greco piano territory, but knight F6. Now Greco piano is actually bishop C5, but with knight F6, it's just the two knights defense, and we go into a Traxler variation almost. Well, it says Wilkes-Barre Traxler. Knight G5, E takes, knight takes, And white did play the very, very best move. So even in 1610, white sacked the knight here to bring the king out. So we have now queen f3 check, and the king's brought to e6, because otherwise that's a disaster, right? Bishop takes is a mate. After that's a mate on that diagonal. After bishop e6, that's checkmate. So the king has to go and protect anyway, e6, with king e6. And now this pin is tapped into, more pressure on the pin. Black's getting some defensive pieces. And now the really, really powerful move in this position, which I hope you all know, I'll give you a test here. How do you exploit black's position? So white to play, what is the strongest move in this position? What do you think? You should play with white here. So I'm hoping you all know what the strongest move is in this position. What do you think? 500 points? Yeah? Yeah, it's to open up things and maybe also create another pin with d4. So you're getting ready for yet another pin, and it of course tries to open up the e file as well. So it's 2 points to it at least. So we can see the devastation if e takes. Actually, even stronger than bishop g5 might be bishop f4 apparently. There's probably a reason for this. D takes, castles, and everything's like wide open, isn't it? We've got this big threat. And so we have this position. Black's going to get blasted. Oh, that's the reason for bishop f4, to win the queen here. Sorry, to win the queen here. So yeah, maybe that's the most accurate. But I'd say also on the ridiculous ed, bishop g5 looks strong as well. But apparently bishop f4 is the strongest. But anyway, aside from that, c6 was played, and we have now the pin, which is a very useful feature here. h6. White took on e7, which seems helpful, but it might actually be it might not be the most optimal, but it seems helpful. Now white castles queenside, and technically black might be okay here, it seems, about equal, believe it or not. So here, but black makes a big mistake now. Bishop g5 might keep the balance, but black was a bit greedy in this position with rook takes f2, and now the balance is in white's favour after d takes e5, because now there's huge pressure on d5 with that nasty pin there. Now the check is a bit too late here. We have rook d2, but white has the advantage that his rooks are well mobilized. These are kind of spectators. h4, rook takes, and that d5 is a very, very big problem now, with all the white pieces ganging up actually on d5. After bishop takes, we have this slaughter time. Basically, it's an absolute slaughter now. Queen g5, double check, and after king e7, there's a nice move which ends the game really well. Black actually resigned after this move. Can you see white play and win? I'll give yourself 200 points if you get this. So it's the final move of the game. White play. What would you play in this position, which is a totally winning move, it seems? Although, you know, it must be noted that white is currently material down, so we'll investigate exactly why this is a crushing move. So white play here. What do you think about this position? Any ideas? Oh. Someone said a move which is actually very, very strong as well. Okay, I'll give you 200 points for the second strongest, but 500 points for the top strongest. Actually, Alright, the absolute strongest, Queen d5 apparently is very dangerous and winning as well, but Rook g6, and black actually resigned here. Let's see, for example, Queen d2, we can take here and play the check here, and then this is a nice checkmate because we can see all the escape squares are again used up, so that's a nice exploitation there. In this position, if King e8, it's still a forced mate like this. I'm taking this one and forget about this defense for a moment. Queen g5, or if we forget about Queen g5, then it's kind of immediate checkmate because that bishop's hanging as well. Yeah, so King f7, Queen, yeah. Now, so rook g6, yes. What to do? If takes, yeah, this is just easily winning for white because basically, I mean, you can see it's trivially winning for white because although black's got a lot of material, the material hasn't got any time to do anything, and we've got a loose piece here to pick up as well. Okay, so that's quite an interesting game, 16-10. Now let's have a look at another one, Philidor. Now Philidor is a really interesting character from France. So Philidor coined the term the pawns of the soul of chess, and some sources say he might not have literally kind of said that. He might have said something more to the equivalent of the pawns of like the life and soul of chess. So let's have a look. This Philidor game against NN, which was in 1749. So Philidor is white. So we have this position, d4 takes bishop b6, and now knight ge2. Actually, this is quite an involved game. Bishop d3. White gains a bit of space there. Bishop e3, and actually you might mistake this for a modern game because, well, kind of, because it seems more positional in nature, right? This game, 1749, and it seems almost like a positional game here, which is interesting. White's sort of accumulating advantages, and you might have thought the whole thing about accumulating advantages was surely we're in the wrong era because that was Steinitz, accumulating small advantages until they were winning. But if you look at this game, it looks as though white is playing positionally so far. He's got, you know, that important light square bishop, and he's got, more importantly for him, pawn mobility. So he's got this great pawn mobility. He's trying to, you know, like play for f5. There's a nice key square on e4. Now this supports things like bishop c4. That's stopped. But g4, and we've got this pawn mobility coming in, which is a key thing. So knight g3, and again it looks as though f5 is well on the cards. Knight e3, and it just seems to be like a modern treatment of this game because actually a positional sacrifice, exchange sac, is used here, and with that thing, with this, it's still looking like really good. There's much more pawn inertia here to play with. Okay, a2's dropping though, but now with this, f5 looks to be a key thing for white to do. Technically black was doing quite well here with rook b2 though, it should be noted, but he played actually queen takes b3, which is a little bit riskier because you can see that the blockade's been lifted, so we've got even more pawn mobility, and also it's away from the king. So we have this move queen e4, and the queen goes back, and now pawn mobility is demonstrated. f5, yeah, mobile pawns. Queen d5. White doesn't mind just taking queens off and taking here because these are two connected passed pawns really. They're just getting stronger and stronger, these pawns. Okay, so bishop d3, bishop f5. So all white needs to do is protect f6, and then we're ready to run, ready to roll again. So knight h5, ready to roll again. Check, little inconvenience. If the king had gone here, I think, well, there's knight takes e5, which is annoying, because the back row is slightly vulnerable. This is slightly annoying, and maybe this is not so hot for white. So actually, bishop g4. Bishop g4 though is not supposed to be brilliant, because there was actually a resource here in rook b6 which wasn't played. I'm trying to hold up the pawns. If e6, just taking, believe it or not, and after taking, well, no, that's pinned. Sorry, that's pinned. That's the point. So if rook takes, then there's rook takes g4 check, and king takes. So that was a defensive possibility, but it wasn't used here. So instead of rook b6, which would have been a brilliant defense, well, for the moment, we have actually knight d2, and the pawns are ready to roll again. e6 check, and it's too much now, the pawns. f7, they're crashing through. I think even e7, yeah, that's okay, but even stronger is the check, and now bishop h5. This is really, really strong, threatening that e7. It's totally devastating. White's going to be queening here. So this game seems actually a really different kettle of fish to the other games. There seems to be some elements of positional understanding in Philidor's play. Definitely a contributor to the later understanding of the pawns and how dangerous they can be. So that was a 1749 really early example of pawn inertia, and there was also an exchange sacrifice there just for that goal, to help that more fundamental goal of trying to get the pawns to have great mobility. Now let's have a look at this game, 1770. So remember, this is the best of the best that chess games come. You can check these out. This is now this one was very interesting. Playing white was the Mephisto automation against no name. So the Mephisto automation apparently was created in 1871. It was made by Charles Godfrey Gumpel, and unlike the Turk and Ajib, it had no hidden operator and functioned by electromechanical means. So you might find this surprising, because we're talking, you know, wow, 1871, really? So Gumpel took 6 or 7 years to build, and it was first shown in 1878 at his Leicester Square home. Mephisto was operated by Isidor Gunsberg in the main, but when it went to the Paris Exposition in 1889, it was worked by Jean Torbenhus. It was shown regularly for 10 years, and at one time it had its own club. After 1889, it was dismantled, and its subsequent whereabouts are unknown. So the Mephisto actually was one of my first chess computers. I think I had a Mephisto Challenger. I think it was Mephisto Challenger 9 was my first chess computer, and actually that helped. It could actually solve some interesting chess puzzles if left on for a long time. So that led on to a popular brand, you know, the Mephisto computers, which were these physical computers. But anyway, this is like 1770. Okay, let's have a look. So it says actually 1770 is speculative, but anyway, let's have a look. E4, E5. Knight F3. I'm sure there's a little man in here. It's not a computer. No, I don't know. I'm sure. Okay. So knight c6, d4, e takes, knight takes, yeah, queen h4, and white plays in a nice gambit fashion, knight f3, queen takes, e4 check. I'm sorry, the year looks far too ancient for this to have been any sort of mechanical contraption. I don't know about you guys, but That does for me seem a bit suspect. So that, but they literally say in the notes 1770 is speculative, right? So bishop e2, d5. White castles. No, it can't be. But anyway, bishop e6, knight c3. These midgets are getting everywhere, creating these illusions of artificial intelligence. Yeah, nothing against midgets, but it's a bit naughty, isn't it, to say that this was some artificial intelligence back in 1770. Yeah. Okay, so bishop b5, knight g e7, knight d4, hitting the queen. f4 threatening f5. It looks as though f5. Right, let's actually add a bits here just in case. This looks to be getting as though there's a threat of f5. I think there is a threat of f5. Black plays f5. Rook e1, hitting the bishop. Bishop drops back, but that drops the pawn. Slight weakness to the last move. Yeah, but black saves his king safety a bit with castling queenside. White takes on c6, knight b5, check, that's parried, bishop e6. Now that's defended with this one. Takes, queen f7, that's defended. The rook swings in for the attack here, some sort of attack. Rook b1. I have a hard time believing this game. Sorry, but anyway, b4, knight takes b4. Now, don't shoot the messenger, right? Sorry, these games are highlighted, as I say, because they're in the best of the best at ChessGames.com. Now, what that means is a lot of people put them in their collections, and this includes, by the way, all the made-up games of Alexander Alekhine. Yeah. And just today, I mean, I don't know, one of my videos was picked up for one of Alekhine's fabrications, and someone was saying, you know, public alert message, it's a made-up game, right? But, you know, the reason I wasn't too bothered by that, yeah, Alekhine making up games, is because if you don't look at the games that he's made up, you'll have no idea of that side of Alekhine, his creativity, what he considers beautiful in chess. That they might be lies, a lot of these games, but they show some sort of element of creativity. And, you know, what are compositions? They're just made up as well. So people make up puzzles, people make up games sometimes, but it's the motives that are assigned to Alekhine. You know, okay, maybe he had a bit of an ego, but also maybe, you know, he was just a creative genius. That might be another reason why, for example, Alekhine made up games. But I'm not entirely sure at this point why this game was made up. Yeah, but anyway, so we have queen d4. I mean, it could have been to show some sort of technological prowess. So queen d4. This is really dangerous now. Threatening, it's actually a mate in 5 coming up. So knight c6. Okay, so a brilliant combination actually. This is a forced mate in 6 now. So yes, great AI for 1770, right? So white to play. Okay, so white to play. You know, if you want to refuse to look at made-up games, the only loser is you. You're you know. If you have this condition, games need to be genuine, there needs to be evidence for games, then a wake-up call, right? What evidence do you have for any of the game scores, you know, for any game, you know, before 1950? They might have got all the game scores wrong. I don't know. You know, you need hard evidence. But anyway, here is a mate in 6. So what would you play in this position? All right? What would you play? So there's a mate in 6 in this position. I don't know what they've said about this game though. Yeah, I think this game must have been mocked quite hard, but there's a mate in 6 here. Okay, actually, on the notes by Sally Simpson at chessgames.com, it's I think it says I think we should trust Steinitz and R.M. Coles on this one. Coles. And as they say, the game was not an automation, but it had Isidor Gunsberg hiding inside. So that was the little midget hiding inside Isidor Gunsberg. Yeah, because you didn't have AI like this to do a mate in 6 in 1770, and I'm not standing by that. I'm just saying this is what you'll find. So Isidor Gunsberg. Okay, maybe it was him playing white. So this is a mate in 6. White play. And you might wonder, who is Isidor Gunsberg?
Gunsberg Isidor.
Alright. Okay. He actually was a challenger to Steinitz, believe it or not, for the World Chess Championship, but lost. Plus, he won 4 against Steinitz, the first official World Chess Champion. Lost 6 and drew 9. So this isn't such a bad player by World Chess Championship standards. So he's not only an operator, but also kind of a challenger for Steinitz. In 1890. Which would date this game much later. Very strong player if it's him. Okay, it's rook takes b7 check. This is clinically proven, by the way. I'm engine checking this. Can you find the move here? So white's play, 200 points. Yeah, okay, rook takes a7 check. Now if knight takes a7, queen b6 and queen c7 is checkmate. Sorry, and that's actually the game continuation was this, but with king a8, which allowed knight c7 checkmate. Okay, and if you want to see some variations, so that was the game continuation with the knight c7 checkmate. Some more variations here. There's check, and here it's either. I'll just say that. Sorry. If here, then there's check and mate, and if king c8, I haven't mentioned king c8 yet. We drag the king back to the b file for queen b6 check, and then queen b7 checkmate. So yeah, a very, very neat checkmate, and it's probably by one of the very strongest players of the time, if it is by Isidor Gunsberg. And it does say, if you look up Isidor Gunsberg, right, it says he began his career as the hidden operator of the chess automaton Mephisto. In 1876, he moved to Britain and was later granted citizenship. So he was definitely one of the strongest competitors of his era. But yeah, for some strange reason, started as the hidden operator of the Mephisto. So there you have it, a game of the Mephisto, which might have been Isidor Gunsberg. Okay, so let's have a look at another. So this is the 7th of the top 10 of the best of games before 1800. Was No Name against Greco. Let's have a look at this game. So Greco playing black. Let's have Greco's perspective against No Name. E4, E5. We have a king's gambit. And actually Greco responded with F5 fascinatingly. F5, that keeps a lot of attention, doesn't it? F5. That is actually way down the list of responses. That symmetrical reply in Livebook. We have E takes F5, check. So black has created kind of weaknesses a bit on the diagonal, well, some light square weaknesses, and is now threatening E takes F4 check. We have check, King D8, F takes E5, check, Knight F6, gaining a tempo on the queen now. And black seems to be getting good central control, and is also threatening at F5 now, as well as just getting good central control. We have G4, H5 trying to undermine white structure. So this is great for 1625. That's what this game is dated at. H3, we have H takes, Rook takes, but now we have black's in the driving seat after check. Black's dismantling white's pawn chain after knight takes G4, threatening knight F2 check, forking queen and king. Queen takes D5 check, bishop D7, so black's getting well ahead of development and is threatening now queen takes G1. The knight moves, but now we have a classic pattern: knight F2 check, king E1, knight D3 check, king D1. And can you see what black plays here? Everyone should see it, I hope. So 500 points. So Greco to play with black. What does he play? So the wonderful thing about this is apparently 1625 this game. Okay, I hope you've seen the smothered mate. Queen E1 check. So this smothers the checkmate here, smothers checkmate. Knight F2 checkmate. So an amazing game for the time. And many people are kind of amazed by Greco, you know, saying how instructive and funny he is. And perhaps the origin of modern chess strategy was born with Greco. Because, yeah, he offered a great set of annotated games, the earliest set of amazing annotated games. Okay, so the 8th game out of the 10, let's have a look at this one. So this is Roy Lopez, as in Roy Lopez, the Segura, against, Giovanni Leonardo Di Bona da something. What? Cutry. Okay. This is the Roy Lopez, as in the guy that the Roy Lopez was named after. Roy Lopez, born circa 1530, was the leading Spanish player of his day. So Roy Lopez playing white. He was a priest from Zafra in Extremadura, and chess made him famous in the court of Philip II. In 1560, on ecclesiastic business, he visited Rome, and while there he defeated all the strongest Italian players, including De Cutry. He read Damiano's book and decided to write his own, which was published soon after his return to Spain. Okay, let's have a look at this game. So E4 from Roy Lopez. He played actually the King's Gambit here. Okay, so Bishop C4, C6, Knight F3, Bishop G4, F takes, D takes, and guess what white can play? The Roy Lopez, he's played the King's Gambit. Okay, so white's play. So can you see the tactic here? It gets more advanced next week, so I'll go much further into the future. So we're going to start off very, very simple this week, right? So white play. What's the tactic here? What would you play in a bullet game? 500 points. So remember, this game was 1575, so this is really high tech for the time, this sort of tactical stuff, yeah? Okay, the strongest move by far is bishop takes f7 to get this lovely fork. Knight takes e5, forking bishop and king. And so the queen takes, and then queen e6 check was played, which is really actually I should have tested you on this. This is really the strongest move. Actually, it's even, in a way, this is probably a good test. Can you see here why queen e6 is really strong? I'll show you. Queen e7, because check forces the queen back, and then we take on d8, so we can fork king and rook. So that's amazing stuff. 1575, great tactics there from white. Okay, so the 9th game I want to show you. So there's 9 out of 10 games prior to 1800. The 9th game. So this is actually played in London, England. It was Smith against Philidor. So someone called Smith. That's an unusual name, isn't it? Smith. Who is this Smith? Don't know. It seems like a generic title for someone from London. Okay, so against Philidor. So we see. Let's take Philidor's side. E4 from Smith. E5. Bishop c4. Knight f6. d3. c6. Bishop g5. Pinning. I mean, what we get from Philidor are the most sophisticated games compared to the other games. We see sophistication from Philidor in this set of 10 games, interestingly. So d6, okay, bishop e6. Because look, you know, he's controlling central squares, he doesn't mind double pawns, he's got f-file dynamic. And he plays g5. Knight d7. Now h5, screwing that g4 square. King e7, connecting rooks elegantly and efficiently. d5. Knight f8. In fact, this game looks like kind of it could have been played by a really strong modern player, because what he's doing is getting a knight into f4. He's going to weaken f4 and put a knight in there, basically. So he's playing really great stuff. Bishop drop back. Knight d4. King goes here. Now h4, yeah, weakening the dark squares. There's this nice diagonal. So the dark square is weakened. He doesn't mind taking off the queens because this bang, knight f4 check is so powerful. Rook takes h3. And guess what Philidor plays here, which is very, very nice, but there might even be something technically stronger. But let's go with Philidor's continuation. So black to play here for 200 points. What would you play with black? Oh, hi, Mick Towell on stream. Philo28. So let's see. Black to play in this position. 200 points. I hope you can spot it. But I think, you know, black played really positioning. I don't know what you think about Philidor's games, but he's like the positional guru of this set of games. Okay, you're saying to double rooks, right, some of you. You can do that, and that's kind of winning actually as well, because knight d3 is pretty nasty. Because then, yeah, that is winning as well. But rook takes h2 is really good. It's like the second strongest, because after check, black's winning material. Check. He played knight h3 here. Stronger that's check, but stronger might be the check here, and then check here. Knight d3. This would be technically stronger than what he played, but he played actually knight h3 check, and white should have played king g1 to prolong the game. He didn't play that. Sorry, king g2 to prolong the game. So for example, like this would prolong the game a little bit. Of course black's winning, but he actually just went into the checkmate instead. King g4, rook h4, checkmate. But yeah, Philidor seems to be really like advanced positionally. Don't you think, compared to the other games? Very advanced positionally. Now the 10th game I like to show is yet another Philidor game. Okay, so this is John Brill against Philidor in London. This is a Blindfold sim apparently in 26. We've actually got a really concrete date here, 26 of May 1783. Let's have a look at this Blindfold simul. I just don't know if this is made up or what. Someone who can play a Blindfold simul in 1783 seems to be like what is he, like an X-Men or something? He's playing Blindfold chess simul in 1783. I mean, what? Yeah, that's just staggering. It's just staggering. So okay, f5. Okay, this is on a par with the Mephisto automation existing. So black seems to be playing a really good positional game here so far. I mean, if this is really the case, then we can say Philidor is actually stronger than me and anyone watching this stream. I mean, probably stronger than 95% of us. So, I mean, if this is to be believed, a Blindfold simul 1783, I mean, seriously? Okay, because his play doesn't seem that bad, especially being a Blindfold simul. Yeah, like positional play to get into the c4 looks pretty good. So he's positionally outplaying his opponent. He's got a G file to work with now. And the B file. So he's got two files to potentially work with. 2 pawns on 2 files to potentially work with here. Bishop a3. C takes. Exchange of rooks. He's infiltrating down that C file. Rook c3. This pawn wants to be liberated as well. Blockader. Rook d3. Bishop takes. Takes here. h4. So he's disrupting white's pawn chain. For knight h5. So the threat now includes knight takes f4, right? For rook f3. Knight takes f4 is played, and we've got pawn mobility again, haven't we? If this blockader can be lifted. Check. Yeah, we've got 2 connected passed pawns here, potentially. And f4, yeah, they're pretty dangerous because also they're taking away a lot of escape squares at the moment with the way the king's positioned. Check. King f7, this king comes to rescue the situation with this pawn. e3, if the pawns are here, they really are taking away all the escape squares from the white king. After h6 f3, actually white resigned here. It is actually completely lost now. White resigned. If say king e1, f2 check, and we just play the check and we're queening with check, right? So yeah, that's amazing. You know, the mobility it was pretty brief actually after the pawns came mobile. So anyway, these were the games. You'll find them on chessgames.com. They're in the section called Best of the Best Notable Games of Games Prior to 1800. So we've had a look at all 10, funny enough, in this session. But you might want to check out the background stories more of these games. I'll give you the link actually on stream if you want to check out these games and play through them again. But have a look at the comments. I'll give that link. I don't know if I can give it here. No, I can't on Play Chess. But anyway, I hope you got something from this, just for historical interest. So that was a fun way of using a session. I thought myself anyway. Hope you got something from it. If you did like this session, thumbs up the if you can. That'd be cool. Nice, appreciated. Okay, see you next week then. Thanks very much.